Hello, my name is Lauryn Acosta, and I am going to be starting off with question number 6, learning with your peers. Throughout the semester, we have been working in groups that consist of 2 to 4 people. My partner throughout this course was someone who I met in Bonnie's class when I took her for 1301. The experience I have had with working and sharing ideas with my partner and several other people in this class has been great. Since the beginning of the semester, my partner and I made it clear that we would write our research paper on 2 different topics. Although our topics were not similar in any way, we did not let that affect the way we gave each other advice. Some days we wouldn't share anything with each other at all because we were both too busy trying to figure out what we were going to do and how we were going to put our ideas to use. But there were also other days we would not stop talking about our research ideas because we either felt conflicted or nervous. So we would ask each other, hey, what do you think about this? And do you think you could help me out with, this or that? Does this sound okay? Just stuff like that. There's one example that I would like to use for what I thought was extremely helpful when it came to my project. We were set up into several groups at random pick, and we were then paired up with the person sitting next to us. We were required to discuss our ideas on our solution to our big research problem and how our project would help the audience intended. The girl I was paired up with encouraged me to throw out the website development idea that I had and persuaded me to go with my second idea, which was to build and design a board game. I feel that going with the board game was the best decision I had made, and since I am a person who is very indecisive, it really helped me that I had another person help me out by telling me, no, I think it is best if you go with this idea rather than the other. Your audience would be more interested and engage in using this method to learn about the problem you provided versus making a website where someone will have to read and probably not get educated on the topic. So this is what she helped me come up with. And this board game is, used for memorization and identification. And what I thought it could be used for is to be placed in, local areas where you visit your doctor. And the general tools used in a doctor's office memorization game is supposed to be level 1. So I put Velcro on each side, and it's pretty simple. All you do is just just paste it wherever you think the image matches the right description. And here I made the human torso, and this is supposed to be a level 2 game, which is just the same thing as level 1, except these are surgical tools that are being used in emergency rooms, doctor's office, just stuff like that. Overall, learning with my peers actually helped me because it taught me that everyone has different learning techniques, and because you work with other people, it gives you the opportunity to learn the way they go about things, and from there you can, compare and contrast the way you learn about things and decide what techniques work best for yourself. Working with others provided me with many options to better myself and extend my knowledge further. Moving on to question number 7, peer feedback responses. The most common thing about feedback is that you don't always like what you get. Some people might not spend much time on reading over the problem that you pinpointed, and they'll just pick something random. And that random thing might be something that you liked or felt confident about your paper. And then someone's going to come along and tell you, you know what, I don't think it sounds good. It kind of makes you feel unconfident after a while. One problem that I struggled with was when somebody asked me to provide them with feedback of their poem and how they believed that their solution might be a total fail. I did not know how to respond to them. An example is I felt that the feedback that I gave him was not that good, but I did try my best to help him out. I tried putting myself in his shoes by thinking to myself, how would I feel if someone knew nothing about this topic that I'm talking about and just provided me with a crappy response for feedback? I then thought of Bonnie and how she had mentioned in 1301 and 1302 that when we feel in doubt, we should either ask her or share an experience that you struggled with similar to the person that you are providing feedback to. Once I applied what I had learned from the past, I no longer felt stuck. And that allowed me to do a pretty good job on my part of providing feedback to my classmate. Example 2, the feedback that I received from a peer in my class. One was good feedback, however, the other one I felt wasn't as good, but I did my best with what I could. So I'll start off with the feedback that I received from a peer in my class that I felt did not help me out as much as I wanted it to. So I felt that he was too confused or maybe uninterested, so it might have been hard for him to comprehend what I was trying to say, especially since it was just a rough draft at the time. Also, the opinion provided to me was very vague, so I was unable to use it. I have to say that this was probably the worst experience that I have had with peer feedback responses. However, I think that it can sometimes be difficult for one to give feedback on a paper that they feel is boring to them, or if they are simply not interested in the topic, but that is what practice is for, because we can't always pick and choose who we want to give feedback to. So what I asked is, should I provide a paragraph that includes the differences between the RN and Temple Grandin? If so, how should I start off? I have looked up sentence starters, but I still do not feel confident. So what I wanted was, probably a better idea on if I was going about the right way of comparing and contrasting a doctor to an animal science, or veterinarian I should say, and how they put their tool development design to use. And so what he what he asked me or wrote me was, the question would rather be, is RN important to explain and Temple Grandin? If so, then you should just explain what they mean, but that's all. Just define them. That way your audience knows what they're talking about. It's simple just to start out with RN is and go on to Temple Grandin and do the same, but do not add another paragraph for them. Keep it short. But I did introduce Temple Grandin in the beginning of my essay, and as well as the RN. So maybe I feel like he was confused because he didn't read the whole thing. But I I think that it is also on my part too, because I should have written there, you know, I already explained what both of them are, but now I just want to compare and contrast them. So example 3, which was that I felt was good feedback that was given to me, was a girl who had given me feedback on my introduction, which I thought was not flowy enough. She did a really good job in providing feedback because she took the time to write a whole introduction that I could use to replace mine with. Although I liked her introduction, she thought that mine was fine just the way I had written it. And at the end of the day, I had decided to keep my original introduction post rather than replacing it with the one that she provided for me. So here I asked, this is my introduction. I wrote, I'm not sure if my introduction is clear. Can you tell me what I need to fix if needed, or give me an example of what it should look like? It seems like I am not going into enough detail to make the reader understand what I am trying to state. And she wrote to me, I like your intro and I think there is significant detail, but I will write you an example of what I think it should look like anyways. And she wrote me, when you walk into a doctor's office or veterinarian's office, you often think about the coldness of the room and sterile smell in the air, but very rarely will the thought of the medical tools or the history behind the tools that are being used on you or your pet will cross your mind. Whether it would be for every tool you run into has a lengthy history of how it came about. The creation of a medical tool is far more complex than the general public know it to be. They don't know what the process of creating a tool may consist of months, even years of constant research and development, so that is the best possible and most useful tools that are invented. These clinical trials are what has helped create the tools that doctors use every day. What leads doctors, etc., to decide and design the tools that would be most useful based off their clinical trials? Is the funding for clinical trials, or can it also be used toward designing the tool? How long does the process take? I hope what I wrote is useful in some way. If you don't like it, what I do suggest is that you add a little bit of what a clinical trial is, because the word is just kind of thrown out there in the question. And I did take what she had told me into consideration, but I asked another peer of mine and they thought that the introduction was okay. So once I got a second opinion, I thought that it was fine. This semester has taught me that not all feedback given to you might not always be good enough or help you out, but as you practice, your skills will get better when providing feedback. Another solution to this problem would be to ask another peer or your professor to share ideas so you won't be stuck. Overall, it is better and more helpful for one if they point out what they don't like about their paper, and from there on it is made easier for their peer to correct or help them fix the problem. Moving on to question 2. In high school, I was never assigned to write research papers. When I got to this class, I was worried about how I would approach writing, conducting my research essay, and how the overall end result would be. And just like 1301, I had the same problem. I had trouble developing my research question at first because it was hard time my research question into my interests. And especially because what I wanted to write about this semester was more difficult than what I wrote about last semester. And I think another thing I struggled with was my secondary sources. Um, I had to delete some because some of my secondary resources just weren't compatible, and after a while they were deleted. I think I have an example here. Wait, never mind. Okay, I actually deleted it, but I went about I approached finding my secondary resources with the CRAP worksheet, and in my opinion, that worked well for me because of the questions that were asked in the CRAP worksheet, like when was information published or posted. If it was more than 10 years older, I believe, then I could not use it because it wasn't a reliable source. But luckily, I was able to find all up-to-date secondary resources for my research paper. Um, Another thing that I found difficult was that I am not confident when writing, so that just made things harder for me. I believe, because there was several times where I just thought, no, this won't work and this will be harder for me. But I think that conducting the research and writing the essay became easier to develop over time because of the fact that it was divided into several steps. Every time that I completed a step, I noticed that I was actually writing my final essay. All I had to do was go back and reread and check my secondary sources to see if they were reliable and if the links I provided were still working, and just comparing and contrasting, since I had a more complex research question that involved both doctors, nurses, and veterinarians. The process helped me, the process of all the steps that we had to do that led up to our research paper helped me because it made it easier to develop. And I believe that in the future, if I'm ever required to write a research essay again, I would try to use steps similar that lead up to the research log. I mean, not the research log, the crap sheet, and all the other steps that I was given in this class, such as the analyzing worksheet and the design and test worksheet, the critique and research. All of those I would use. All of those I would use to help me in the future, or not those specifically, but something similar to those tools provided to me. And this will guide me. This will help guide me by setting up a solid plan before writing a research paper. I think that this will guarantee me a successful grade if I ever need to put this to use in the future. And that concludes my final.